In 1922, a young woman named Molly Maggia walked into a dentist's office complaining of tooth pain. When the dentist examined her, he found something horrifying. Her jawbone was so decayed that he lifted it clean out of her mouth. It crumbled in his hands like ash. Molly was 24 years old. Within weeks, she would be dead. But here's the most chilling part. Her employer knew exactly why this was happening, and they let it continue. This is the story of the Radium Girls, young women who were poisoned for profit and whose fight for justice changed workplace safety forever. It's 1917. America has entered World War I, and there's a massive demand for luminous watchdials that soldiers can read in the dark trenches. The United States Radium Corporation in Orange, New Jersey has the solution. A miracle paint called Undark, made with radium, a newly discovered element that glows brilliantly in the dark. The company needs workers to paint these tiny watch dials by hand, and they're recruiting young women. The pay is excellent, more than 3 times what a factory worker or store clerk could earn. For working-class families, this is an opportunity their daughters can't pass up. Girls as young as 14, like Catherine Schaub, line up for jobs. Grace Fryer, a talented artist, joins in 1917. The Maggia sisters, Molly, Quinta, and Albina, all work there together. These aren't just workers. They're daughters, sisters, friends. They're told they're lucky to work with radium, that it's harmless, even beneficial. Some doctors are prescribing radium water as a health tonic. The company tells the girls that radium will put roses in their cheeks. The work is meticulous. Each dial painter sits at her station with a small pot of glowing paint, a camel hair brush, and hundreds of tiny watch dials. To paint the fine numbers and hands, the company instructs them to use a technique called lip pointing. Dip the brush in the radium paint, twirl the tip between your lips to make it sharp and fine, then paint the dial. Lip, dip, paint. Lip, dip, paint. Hundreds of times a day, thousands of times a week. The girls think it's glamorous. The radium dust gets into their hair, on their clothes, on their skin. When they walk home after their shifts, they glow in the dark like ghosts. They call themselves the Ghost Girls and think it's magical. They paint their nails, their teeth, even their faces for parties, delighting in how they shimmer in the darkness. But with every brushstroke shaped between their lips, they're ingesting a deadly poison. By 1922, the Ghost Girls aren't glowing anymore. They're dying. Molly Maggia is the first to die, but her symptoms started years earlier. Terrible tooth pain. Then her teeth began falling out. Then her jaw. The official cause of death listed on her death certificate? Syphilis. A deliberate lie designed to shame her and her family into silence. But Molly wasn't alone. Grace Fryer's teeth started falling out. Her back hurt so badly she could barely walk. Catherine Schaub developed severe anemia and couldn't lift her arms. Quinta McDonald's hip shattered while she was simply walking down the stairs. One by one, the vibrant young women who once glowed in the dark were becoming living corpses. The radium they'd been ingesting for years had settled into their bones. Radium mimics calcium, so their bodies absorbed it eagerly, depositing it directly into their skeletal systems. Once there, it emitted constant radiation, disintegrating their bones from the inside out. Their spines crumbled, their jaws disintegrated, their bones broke spontaneously. The medical term was radium necrosis, but the newspapers called it radium jaw. And through it all, the United States Radium Corporation insisted it had nothing to do with their work. But here's what the company didn't want anyone to know. They had known radium was deadly from the very beginning. While the dial painters were being told to put brushes coated in radium into their mouths, the company's own scientists were handling the same material with lead screens, masks, and ivory-tipped tongs. They wouldn't dream of touching it with their bare hands. The president of the company, Arthur Roeder, wouldn't even tour the factory floor without protection. Think about that. The men who profited from this paint protected themselves from it while telling teenage girls to put it in their mouths. In 1924, 2 years after Molly Maggia's agonizing death, the company's own executives commissioned a safety study. They hired Dr. Cecil Drinker and his wife Catherine from Harvard School of Public Health to investigate the factory conditions. The Drinkers' findings were damning. The factory air was contaminated. The dust was radioactive. The workers were dying from radiation poisoning. The report stated unequivocally, the women's illnesses were directly caused by their work. The United States Radium Corporation buried the report. They didn't just ignore it, they actively suppressed it. When the New Jersey Department of Labor requested the findings, the company submitted a falsified version that claimed the factory was safe and the illnesses were unrelated to radium exposure. They knew, and they lied. When workers started getting sick, the company hired doctors to examine them, not to help them, but to cover up the truth. These doctors were instructed to withhold their findings. Medical records mysteriously disappeared. Death certificates were falsified. The company even spread rumors that the women's symptoms were caused by syphilis, deliberately destroying their reputations to discredit them. Meanwhile, they kept hiring new girls, fresh young faces who had no idea they were walking into a death sentence. Grace Fryer knew something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't prove it. For 2 years, she searched desperately for a lawyer willing to take on the United States Radium Corporation. Every attorney she approached turned her down. The statute of limitations was running out. The company was too powerful, and Grace was running out of time. Finally, in 1927, a lawyer named Raymond Barry agreed to represent her. Grace wasn't alone anymore. 4 other women joined her lawsuit: Catherine Schaub, Edna Hussman, and the surviving Maggia sisters, Quinta and Albina. Together, they sued for damages. But building the case required proof. The company was claiming the women's illnesses were coincidental, caused by anything but radium. So the women's legal team exhumed Molly Maggia's body 5 years after her death. When Dr. Joseph Kneff tested her remains, his instruments went wild. Molly's bones were still so radioactive that they glowed in the dark and could expose photographic film. Her skeleton was literally dissolving from radiation, exactly as the living women's bones were dissolving. The evidence presented in the case was absolutely irrefutable. This was a turning point. The case went to court in 1928, and it became a media sensation. Newspapers across the country and around the world covered the trial. But by the time the case was heard, the 5 women plaintiffs were so severely poisoned they could barely attend. They were carried into the courtroom. They couldn't raise their right hands to take an oath. Their bones were too fragile, their bodies too broken. Some testified from their beds. The United States Radium Corporation employed every delay tactic imaginable. They requested postponements, hoping the women would die before the verdict. They challenged every piece of evidence. They smeared the women's characters. But the evidence presented in court was overwhelming. Physicist Elizabeth Hughes, trained by the National Bureau of Standards, testified that she had measured the radon in the women's breath using a gold leaf electroscope. The readings were double that of normal controls. The women had radioactive breath. Dr. Harrison Martland, who had developed new methods for detecting radioactive material in human tissue, testified that the company's own internal studies had proven the danger years earlier. On June 4, 1928, facing public outrage and undeniable evidence, the United States Radium Corporation agreed to an out-of-court settlement. Each woman received $10,000, about $170,000 in today's money, a $600 annual annuity for life, and coverage of all medical and legal expenses. It was a victory, but it was bittersweet. The money couldn't give them back their health. It couldn't give them back their futures. Grace Fryer died in 1933 at age 34. Catherine Schaub died in 1933 at age 30. Quinta McDonald died in 1929. Edna Hussman died in 1931. Molly Maggia had died years before, in 1922, at just 24 years old. But their deaths were not in vain. The Radium Girls lawsuit became one of the most significant occupational health cases in American history. It established for the first time the right of individual workers to sue their employers for occupational diseases. Before this case, if you got sick from your job, you had no legal recourse. Their case led directly to the creation of occupational disease labor laws. It forced companies to prioritize worker safety over profit. The data collected from the Radium Girls' suffering became the foundation for radiation safety standards, standards that protected workers on the Manhattan Project and continue to protect nuclear workers today. In 1970, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, was created. The regulations that protect workers in every industry, from construction sites to hospitals, exist because these women fought back. The site of the original United States Radium Corporation factory in Orange, New Jersey, is now a Superfund site. The contamination was so severe that it required decades of environmental cleanup by the EPA. The poison is still there, buried in the soil, a permanent reminder of what happens when corporations value profit over human life. The Radium Girls were artists, daughters, sisters, and friends who were told that their work was safe. They trusted their employers. They believed the scientists and doctors who assured them there was no danger, and they were systematically poisoned for profit. But they didn't die quietly. They fought. Even as their bodies were betraying them, even as they could barely stand, they demanded accountability. They exposed corporate corruption. They changed history. Today, when you clock into work and see safety regulations posted on the wall, when you have the right to know what chemicals you're working with, when your employer is required to protect your health, you can thank the Radium Girls. Their light didn't just glow in the dark. It illuminated the path toward justice for every worker who came after them. Remember their names: Molly Maggia, Grace Fryer, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, Albina Larice, Edna Hussman, Catherine Donahue, and the hundreds of others whose names we may never know. They were the Radium Girls, and they changed the world.